While we're waiting for giving ourselves a few more minutes, I just wanted to pub a couple of quick things. So I'm guessing one reason why many of you are here is because you got an email from us about this, but I always like to put in a plug for hopping on our newsletter if you are not already. If you go to the Entrepreneurship stepAround.edu homepage, if you just scroll down, there's actually a link at the top to sign up for our email list. If you scroll down, one of the sections on the homepage also asks you about that. So if you're not already, it's a great way to make sure that you're in the loop on all things entrepreneurship that are happening on College Hill. So, and increasingly beyond. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and get started today. We'll probably run like 45-ish minutes. I'm pretty informal. I'm Jonas Clark, the Associate Director here at the Nelson Center. And I, among a variety of things, work largely on venture support. So I do like a gazillion office hours with students. I've met with many of you in office hours. And oversee all of our venture support activities, including BLab. So this is really, BLab and BVP are sort of the two marquee programs that we run, and particularly on the venture support side. So as you can tell, I'm a little croaky today, so I promise I'm not going to get too close to anybody. Hopefully you can hear me all right. What I want to do is just give you a quick rundown of BLab and BVP. You're obviously here because you have some interest, and so I'm going to walk through some kind of nuts and bolts things about BLab and BVP, but also kind of give you some advice and some tips and tricks based on kind of past application cycles that hopefully will be useful to you all. So one thing to note is that we are actually going to be opening up the applications today after this info session. We don't expect anybody to apply today because the deadline is not until February, but we open that up just to give you a sense of what we're going to be asking. So there's a written portion for that asks you about your ventures and the problem you're working on, the solution that you're thinking about or developing, your business model, your team. I think not too many surprises in the application in terms of kind of the what we want to know. And then also there is a short video that we require of all teams that are applying. That's true for BLab and BVP. So, and it's good. Some people prefer being on camera and sort of presenting video. Some people prefer putting together a written application. This gives us a chance to sort of do both. So anyway, so keep your eyes peeled. We'll send out a bunch of reminders about that through our email list. So just be aware. Okay. Also, I will say I'm really informal. So you raise your hands, just shout at me at any point along the way, and don't be shy about that. I won't be offended if you interrupt me at all. All right. So we're going to start with Breakthrough Lab. Let's see. I'm not going to poll you guys about your knowledge of Breakthrough Lab because presumably you know a little something if you're here. But simply put, Breakthrough Lab is a program that we run. It actually is the oldest program. It predates the Nelson Center. Started about 7 years ago now. Might even be 8. I think this summer BLab will be our 8th BLab. Yeah. And it is an experiential program. So many things in life you learn them by doing. That is absolutely true of entrepreneurship. And so this is a program that's designed to help take the idea that's been rattling around in your head, or maybe that you've been working on in and around your other obligations as a student, and it gives you a sort of dedicated time and space and some resources to help you work on that and sort of learn entrepreneurship by doing. It's very much a real world program. So we treat your ventures not like class projects. You don't get a grade from us. Our expectation is that you're trying to build a real world thing that you want out there in the real world in some way, shape, or form. As such, we hold sort of business standards. So, how we interact as students. Sometimes it's not the same way that you would interact with people in a sort of a business setting through an internship or through your own business endeavors. So that's part of it. We are aiming to be productive. So every venture that participates in B-Lab basically develops a set of goals for the program, usually pretty aggressive goals. We're gonna get a prototype out. We're gonna figure out who our customer is. We're gonna raise some money. We're gonna do X, Y, or Z, whatever it might be. Up to you to define that, which is super important, right? We don't sort of give you a cookie cutter set of goals that we predetermine. It's up to you. You know your venture best, right? So it's up to you to think about, in consultation with B-Lab staff, what do you want to try and get done over the course of 8 weeks? We hear every year from B-Lab alums that one of the most important things that B-Lab gave them was dedicated time. I mean, I don't need to tell you all this in the middle of, well, not in the middle, but careening towards finals and doing the huge juggling act that you all are doing. It's sort of hard to have enough dedicated, focused time to really advance a venture in a meaningful way during the term. It can be done, but it's hard. B-Lab gives you space to really focus on that and nothing else but that. It's community-based, so it's a cohort model for B-Lab. B-Lab alums and B-Lab participants learn a heck of a lot by hanging out with their fellow founders. And lastly, it's fun. Yes, we take venture building seriously, but what's the point if you're not having some fun along the way? So just to give you a quick sense, actually having a couple photos in a second, we definitely do have some fun.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. Fun, damn it, fun. Yes.
This past summer, the cohort pretend murdered the faculty director.
Yeah.
And they did a whole video of him being pretend murdered. He showed up in a ghost costume. It was pretty fun.
It was like the B-Lab spin on those.
I'm looking for affirmation.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the B-Lab spin on those dinners where there's a murder in the building. It's very, very fun. So a couple of quick sort of fast facts about the program. So I mentioned already it's the summer, 8 weeks, June and July. It is here in the Nelson Center with a small asterisk, which we'll talk about in a second. Every B-Lab participating student in B-Lab gets a summer stipend of $4,000 to cover your living expenses and to basically float you for the summer. You're not going to get rich on $4,000 for the summer. So it's designed really to cover your expenses, not so much as an investment into the venture per se. It's really about buying you your own time so that you can invest that time into the venture. We also have additional funding set aside for folks who are eligible for summer earnings waivers too. So just something to be aware of, which is really nice, so that if that is an obligation that you have, we have funds to cover that as well. There is a curriculum associated with B-Lab. People come to B-Lab with varying degrees of sort of background in entrepreneurship, and so we do our best to kind of level set right at the outset, at the very beginning of the program. There's sort of a 1 to 2 week, week and a half-ish boot camp at the beginning, where we cover sort of variety of greatest hits, that sort of things that founders need to be aware of and that are going to help you build your venture. We cover all that at the very beginning. And then the following 6 weeks is really about you working your butts off to try and hit those goals that you've developed for yourself. Mentorship is a big part of what comes with B-Lab. So we work hard to match you with sector-specific mentors, which are, I can just tell you a lot of teams who get mentors from B-Lab end up sort of staying in the mentor-mentee relationship after that. Been very, very helpful. I know the B-Lab teams, that are still going strong and growing, that mentors, the mentors that they had in B-Lab are now kind of formal advisors in their companies, which is really cool. We don't have that expectation, but I just raise that because it ends up being really powerful and helpful part of the program. Workspace. So you get dedicated workspace here at the Nelson Center. You get 24/7 swipe access all summer, basically, to work here in the center, and sort of a dedicated workspace upstairs, which is nice. And then the last piece is the program wraps up with the showcase. How many people went to the showcase this year? All right, pretty good, about half-ish, 40%. So that's our sort of demo day showcase where teams have the chance to basically talk about what they accomplished over the course of the semester. It's always really fun. I've actually literally seen a B-Lab team in the sort of social after the showcase, like you get an investment offer from a Brown alum, which is really fun. We also don't have that expectation. We can build that into the showcase, but I just bring that up because getting in front of a big group of people to sort of talk about what you're up to can be a really helpful and sort of powerful thing that happens. So that's another nice piece. We put a lot of work into making that showcase happen, and it's really a fun part. So those are some fast facts. I mentioned fun. So this was, this was after the B-Lab showcase. I think actually this was the one where I saw someone get the investment offer. It's funny. I didn't plan that.
I guess which one.
It was the Better Pop food. God, I'm blanking on the name. Ruby.
There we go.
So yeah, this was post B-Lab showcase a couple of years ago, actually just pre-COVID, which is fun. Throughout the course of the summer, we build in some fun activities for the cohort. Go bowling every summer and try and beat the stuffing out of Jason Harry, which was always a grand tradition.
Me that you have to beat.
Yeah, and now Sheila is our ringer for the Nelson Center, so we don't advocate any betting or anything like that. We don't want people betting their
I got money.
You did?
I did.
I don't want to know about it. I will. This never happens. We are recording this too, which is perfect. So anyway, it's a ton of fun. It's a great chance to hang out and again, sort of spend a bunch of time with fellow founders, all of whom are kind of, alongside you in the trenches trying to build something. So it's a good time. All right. Okay, B-Lab eligibility. So you apply as a team to B-Lab. So we don't admit students per se. We admit ventures, in order to get into B-Lab, at least one person from your venture needs to be a undergraduate, graduate, or medical student from Brown or RISD. I don't know if we have any RISD friends in the room. We do set aside a certain number of stipends for RISD students every year. So, and we've had, I think, almost every cohort, we've had at least one, usually a couple of students, which is really fun. So you may have co-founders who are at other institutions or who have graduated. That's totally fine. If you and some non-Brown or non-RISD folks are applying, you want to apply as a venture to B-Lab, that's okay. However, you are the only one that we can give a stipend to sort of participate in B-Lab. In the past, the way that's typically worked is, if you are meeting with me or with a mentor, I always invite like teams that I work with to, you could have your non-Brown co-founders sort of patch in by Zoom to our meetings and, participate in some ways, but we can't fund them, unfortunately. If you are graduating, hurtling towards graduation, and you're graduating in May, you can still do B-Lab in the summer after you graduate. We get a little bit of a grace period for graduating students that we can still fund you with a B-Lab stipend, which is nice. And that's also true, by the way, of .5ers who are graduating. If you're graduating in a couple of weeks, you are still eligible for B-Lab this summer. We have a preference for teams. We're not anti-solo founders. We just have a preference for teams solely due to the fact that building a venture is a team sport. It's just too hard to do solo, at least for anything longer than a relatively short period of time. Yeah.
How many people would you typically say you would prefer a team size?
More than one, less than 10. I don't know. I don't think we have we're not that prescriptive. We don't have a specific number in mind that we're looking for. And if you're a solo founder, that's totally fine. What I tell solo founders is just expect the team question to be on our radars as B Lab staff and mentor. Like, we're gonna want to know, all right, it's you right now. That's great. What's the game plan for building on it? Because odds are you're going to need more than just you to really move this thing along. And so, can we put together sort of a game plan and kind of, who's the type of person that who we're looking for, that sort of thing. Does that answer your question? One, by the way, one stipend team thing worth mentioning is that we give each team, so if you have a team of 5 Brown students who all want to do B Lab for the summer, we can only fund up to 3 per team. Not because we don't want to be helpful and inclusive, it's purely just a budgetary issue. We can't fund teams of 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever it might be. We haven't really had that come up too much in the past couple of years, but just as an FYI, if you have questions about that, come find us and talk to us, and we'll see. We sort of handle that on a case-by-case basis, but normally we don't fund more than 3. Ability to live and work in Providence during the summer. You can see some little asterisks next to that, which I'll talk about in a second. And then this last one is really important. No outside job course activities during B Lab. What does that mean? You're not taking a summer school course during B Lab. You're not doing a side hustle internship. You're not doing, an ultra alongside B Lab. We feel strongly about this, that, we're providing this opportunity for you to make progress on your venture, not for you to sort of collect as many summer things as you can for the summer, if that makes sense. So if you have questions about that, come talk to us. But we really want you to be able to really focus. And I think history has shown that the teams who take advantage of that ability to really just focus on it, they're the ones that make a ton of progress. So we don't want to divide your attention and your efforts too much. Okay. All right. So about being in Providence during the summer, we have a fairly strict sort of standard about that. In the past, we have given some loose exceptions for people who have a compelling reason to not be in Providence for a part of the summer. For example, we have had teams who needed to go test their tech out in the real world with their prospective customers who happened to be someplace else. Pretty compelling business reason. So they took off for a week or 2 weeks to go do that. And then, we're here for the rest of their time. And that's okay, because it made sense. It made good sense for their venture. We have had a couple of people have kind of challenging personal extenuating circumstances, especially, with COVID. We do sometimes occasionally grant exceptions on that. These are pretty rare, but I did just want to put them in. If you say, I'd love to do B Lab, I'm already in Providence a bunch of the months. Can I participate remotely from, where do you want to be in this? From the Bahamas. Can I do that? Answer, probably not, unless your venture has something to do with the Bahamas, or you have a personal extenuating circumstance that is not, I want to hang out in the Bahamas, so anyway, so you guys, I think, sort of get the logic behind those things. If you have questions about it, come find us. We'll sort of, we can talk a little bit about that, kind of, if your situation might qualify for one of these exceptions. You think that's fair to say, Sheila?
Yes, yeah. I think that's fair.
Okay. All right. Timeline. So super important right now, and we're getting these applications in as we speak. you can apply to have an application mentor to help you through the B-Lab application process. I highly encourage you to take advantage of this. It's probably too strong to say that people who get an application mentor just do better in terms of getting into B-Lab than not. I don't know, we haven't actually looked at those numbers, but I can tell you that I feel like I can often tell when someone has had an application mentor to help them along the way. It's just the quality of the applications on balance tends to be better. Why? Because you can get some feedback from an experienced entrepreneur who can say, hey, wait a minute, I don't think this part of your application is as clear as you think it is. So it's a really helpful tool. So the way this works is you fill out this application, we take a look at it. We have a huge roster of Brown alums who have raised their hand and said, I would love to help out a team. And then we basically put you in touch and you all kind of take it from there. There's no major, formal expectation that you have to have a weekly meeting with your mentor over the next 6 weeks. We don't sort of do that sort of thing. But it's someone who you can reach out to say, can you take a look at my app? Can you take a look at the video that we cut and give us some feedback? Can we meet to sort of talk about it by Zoom? And that worked really, really well. And that form is up on our website right now, by the way, if you want to take advantage of that. The application for B-Lab closes at noon Eastern on February 3rd. And at that point, those apps go out to our review committee and they review them all. We do a big session where we meet as a big committee and we go through them all and work our way towards sort of mid-February 16th. We hash out which finalists we want to bring in for interviews. And so those interviews are conducted in the very beginning of March. And then we will basically notify those who have been accepted into B-Lab around March 11th. So that's when you'll know.
So I'm just going to hop in.
Yeah, hop in.
Backtrack just a little bit. So B-Lab, you can apply to be in B-Lab at whatever stage you are. You can have an idea and not necessarily be 100% sure how it could be realized. That's where an application mentor is going to be a really great resource for you, as will the resources that we have online, which are abundant. It's like a little dizzying. Past applications, videos from participants, that sort of thing. So even if your idea, you think, oh, I don't know about this idea, go for it. Because we are one sector agnostic and we're stage agnostic, right? You could be like ready to go to market tomorrow, or you could have an idea that's going to change 10 times. So we want to see all of that. So don't be shy about that.
Yeah, and we have seen it all. We've had teams who come in and their idea is really, really new. I mean, if you thought of your idea on February 2nd and you're applying on the 3rd, okay, maybe that's not great. Like hopefully you're putting in a little bit of advanced thinking about this. I mean, if you're sitting here in this room, you probably are. And we've had teams that are making money, that have revenue, sort of regular revenue coming in, and everything in between. So that's exactly right. I think sometimes people see like the showcase and they see these like ventures that look like they're really put together and polished, and some cases they are, in some cases they're good at presenting. And they sort of get nervous, like, ooh, I don't know if I'm at that stage yet. I can tell you, having worked with those teams, that many of them were very, very early when they first started. So I agree with Sheila, shoot your shot. I think if you're interested in trying to build a venture, don't worry too much about being too early.
And the other thing I'll say about that is that's not the only way we support ventures. There are many ways, and Jonah's going to talk about those, but some of you may be new to the Nelson Center, and we are here to make your ideas a reality. We're kind of the yes people on campus. We want you to succeed. That's our whole function. So if B-Lab isn't a thing for you this summer, please take advantage of all the resources we have to support your ideas throughout the academic year. We have peer entrepreneurs in residence. We have entrepreneurs in residence. We have an active Slack channel that gives ideas and support for ventures. We have a newsletter. We have mentors. It's all built to help you guys succeed. So take full advantage of us, because that's what we're here for. We love to do that. And we often just feed you.
That's right. Well put, Sheila. That's an important reminder. Okay. Any other questions about BLab? I'm going to move to BVP, which will be a little bit quicker. What is the Brown Venture Prize? It is a prize. So basically, the BVP is designed for the most advanced entrepreneurial ventures on campus. There's no real programmatic component to it. It's just basically a pitch competition. And so it's also sector agnostic. We've had the very first winners of the Brown Venture Prize were a nonprofit. We've had a couple of other nonprofits as finalists along the way. You know, we don't care really what industry you're in or you know, what part of the world your venture operates in. We're pretty wide open in that regard. The one thing that we are looking for, if you had to kind of boil the criteria down to a tagline, is that we're looking for ventures that are trying to create impact at scale. What kind of impact you want to have, maybe it's social, maybe it's civic, maybe it's financial, maybe it's cultural, is really up to you to define and sort of paint us the picture of what you're trying to achieve. The scale part matters. We are looking for ventures that are trying to, that are sort of thinking big and trying to tackle big consequential problems. But like I said, other than that, sort of sector agnostic. We give out $50,000. It's essentially sort of gold, silver, bronze. So first prize is 25, second is 15, and third prize is 10. So of the finalists, there are 8 finalists, typically. We had 1 year we had 7, but 8 finalists. So of all those apply, we winnow it down to 8, and then those 8 come and hang out with me for a few weeks, and we do a ton of pitch coaching. I'm like the coach with the whistle, like again. We do pitch coaching in this room for a couple of weeks to get you ready for the big night, which is on March 16th. The judges who review all of the, help determine the 8 finalists, and then also who are the judges for the night of. It's the sort of star-studded cast of Brown alums who come to campus for the event. The big night, has anyone who's been to the Brown Venture Prize? Okay. It's big. It's, you know, I don't know, we had 300, maybe 350 people the last time we did it at Alumni Hall. It's, you know, it's the lights, the thing, the Britney Spears mic, the whole sort of, you know, demo day style presentation. It's tons and tons of fun. In addition to money, the exposure is also very, very helpful. I mentioned, you know, I have seen all kinds of wonderful, helpful connections made after BVP with Brown alums, Brown venture capitalists, and other folks who get interested in helping teams along the way. Some of that network is facilitated by us through an immersion trip to New York City. So we take the 3 winning teams after BVP, and we all go down for a nice sort of fun event in the city where we do a fancy dinner, and you get a chance to meet a whole bunch of helpful Brown entrepreneurs in New York, which is always really fun. Let's see. This is Interscare. So this was, gosh, how many years ago now? 4 years ago now, I think. Fun fact, these guys just closed a $14 million Series A round not too long ago. What I love about this, people know Interscare? Yeah, okay, cool. What I love about this is that Robbie and Evan and the Interscare team applied to BVP when they were sophomores. Their venture was very early, very early.
I'm not laughing at them, but it's so interesting to see their progress. Like,
still in the same space that they're in now, but like very early. I remember like helping them put together their first pitch deck for this. They somehow managed to squeak into the 8 finalists, and they got up and pitched on the night of. Did not win, but acquitted themselves very well. They had applied for BVP and B-Lab both. So they didn't win BVP, but they went into B-Lab that summer afterwards. Got after building their venture like their hair was on fire. I mean, they just really worked their tails off all summer. Applied for BVP again that next year, which you can do if you don't win it. Once you win it, you go on your merry way, and we give our money to somebody else. But then they won the whole thing the next year, and so I like that just because it's perseverance and hard work counts for a lot. There's a lesson there to be sure, but also that they basically managed to be finalists, but they were still a little green. And so they kind of needed B-Lab to give them the time and space and sort of resources to really build the venture and sort of make it much further along. So when they came back the second time to BVP, sharper, and the business, everything about it was sharper. They just had a lot more answers and they had a lot more information than they had when they first.
And I will say about IndusCare too, is that the Brown University was so supportive of their work, and the work that it required to bring their venture to where it is today required them to sort of have split attention to their academics. And it took them a little longer to get to the finish line at Brown, but they got to the finish line, and everybody was supportive of whatever it took for them to complete their degree and keep their business afloat.
Yeah.
I think it's really awesome.
Yeah, they're terrific. It's not an accident that they have gotten to where they are. So, all right. This is going back away. This was from the very first one. This is one of the nonprofits that I mentioned. A social enterprise, which was the first place winner our first year. This was the same year actually, because that's Samani. So just to give you kind of a sense of what it looks like. If you go online on YouTube, there are past BVP. They're up there, so you can go find them and watch all the pitches, which is kind of fun. I highly recommend it, just to give you a sense of kind of what the night of looks like. Okay. Really quickly. So BVP eligibility, same deal. At least one founder, undergrad, graduate student, medical student, doesn't matter. Last year's winners were 2 PhD students in chemistry. So if you're a grad student, it's totally fine. No RISD folks here, unfortunately. It's the Brown Venture Prize, not the Brown RISD Venture Prize. So that's one difference from B-Lab, is that this is really just for ventures that are sort of have Brown DNA in them. Same deal about graduation. So if you graduate in a couple of weeks or in the spring 2023, that's totally fine. Same preference for teams for the reasons we talked about already. And then there's a link to a video. I'm not going to click on it because we're going to run out of time, but I mentioned it's I highly recommend as well. The timeline for BVP is it basically runs in parallel to B-Lab. So application mentors are open now. Application closes on the exact same day, February 3rd. And then we notify the top 8 finalist ventures. And then we do sort of pitch boot camp at the tail end of February into the early part of March. And then, as we mentioned, big night is March 16th. So pretty similar. It's not an accident, by design that the two things sort of track in parallel with one another. So just to give you a sense, one question I'm going to preempt usually a question that we get is, which one should I apply for? And so I'm going to give you some thoughts about that. First of all, you can always apply to both. That's the reason why we have applications very similar to one another and that they're in parallel. A lot of teams do apply to both. I will say that in general, B-Lab teams tend to be a little bit earlier in their development than BVP sort of finalist teams are. I would say, if you looked at all of the winners of BVP over the years, teams who have previously done B-Lab are very highly represented. Not exclusively, but highly represented in here. So many teams have gone through B-Lab and sort of used that opportunity to get them further along. And then, you know, kind of like InterScare that we just talked about, they then end up applying to BVP. You know, if you don't want to do B-Lab or you can't do B-Lab because you have another summer commitment, but you want to throw your hat in the ring for BVP, totally fine. And like I said, teams who have not done B-Lab have won the Brown Venture Prize and have been finalists as well. So I don't want to kind of overstate it, but there is some slightly further along, less slightly further along is probably a fair generalization. How far along? What do I mean when I say how far along? So one thing that is pretty critical is having a carefully explored unmet need. If any of you have taken Danny Borche's class or read his book or been in office hours with me, or you know that the process that we teach with entrepreneurship is heavily emphasizes early and often exploration of what the problem is. Most founders show up and say, I've got an awesome idea and a solution. And usually what we do is say, okay, great, time out. What problem does it solve? And whose problem is it? How do we know? And usually there is some work there that can be done and needs to be done on the part of the founders. So I would say, you know, you want to come in with a pretty, you know, well-defined problem statement about what the problem is that you're trying to solve. And if you've talked to the folks who have that problem, or if you've done some bottom-up research or customer discovery, whatever you might want to call it, that's really helpful. B-Lab teams usually have a hypothesis for what the solution is to that problem, the solution that they're kind of, they may not have it together yet. You know, they may not have a prototype, but they've got some hunch. This is the problem we're trying to solve, and here's how we think we might best solve it. We don't know for sure, but here's what we think. Usually there's some notion of some kind of economic sustainability model. Is this thing gonna work as, you know, how's this thing gonna work as a business? We don't know what our pricing is. We may not know our unit economics. You know, there's a lot we don't know, but here's our best hunch for how we think this thing is going to be economically viable. Evidence of team history is also really important. So if you've worked with you know, your founders for a while, co-founders for a while, that's great. You know, not a deal breaker, especially for a solo founder, but it is something that gets factored in. And then clear passion for the venture. Passion counts for a lot. You know, a lot of changes, and it can be a tough road to be an early stage founder, and passion really matters. That's what gets you through those stretches that are not so easy. So demonstrated passion for the thing you're working on definitely matters. It doesn't show up in a spreadsheet, it doesn't show up in a pro forma, but it does matter. And basically BVP is slightly, you know, if I had to kind of lay it out, it's basically slightly better developed, a little bit further along on those, in all those areas than the things we just talked about. So a little bit more customer discovery, maybe you actually have a prototype, or you know, something that's a little bit further along. You know, you probably got some numbers behind your economic, you know, your sort of economic model, and, you know, clearer team history. Let's work together for a while. Okay. Oh, and for BVP in particular, why do you need the funding? Like, what is it, you know, what is it going to do for you, or do for your venture? Having a good case there is also pretty helpful. Okay. I'm going to shut up because I've been talking for 40 minutes.
The other thing I'll just throw out there for anybody who hasn't like put their toes in the water of entrepreneurship at Brown, other ways you can do that is take Engine 90, Engine 900, or Engine 1010. We're not an academic unit, but we're housed in engineering. It's a long story and we can tell you more about that later. But so if some of the language here is unfamiliar to you, but the whole idea sounds interesting, consider those classes. The certificate is always an option too, but you know, I'm in charge of the certificate here. I don't really think you have to do the certificate. You just fill your tool belt up with the things you need while you're around and do that. If you want to do that, fine. But so if the terminology is kind of new, but everything sounds interesting, consider those.
Yeah, we don't expect you to be expert. I mean, if you were an expert in entrepreneurship and your venture, had everything it needed, you wouldn't need BayLab or the Brown Venture Program. We get that. You don't need to have it all figured out.
And then the last thing I'll say is like backing way up, as Jonas talked about this a little bit, but our approach to entrepreneurship is it's a structured process for problem solving. And Jonas said that, but we kind of pull the curtain back behind all the language and the things that you see, term sheets and financing and seed funding and angel, we try to make it transparent. And we do that in pretty broad brushstrokes and leave the details up to you, which is how we do most things at Brown, even in academics. You're smart, you're curious, you're going to figure it out. We just paint the broad picture. We connect you with resources and mentorship. And you guys are so awesome at taking it and running with it.
Absolutely true. All right. Questions? I'm going to do my best Howard Anderson impression. We're not leaving until I get 3 questions. Yeah.
Well, we need 2 to start off with.
Okay. We're going to roll 4 questions. I want 4 questions.
All right. So first off, just as a general idea, roughly how many applicants do you usually see for the BVP?
Good question. So it varies from year to year. I'd say on balance, we get close to 40 teams applying to BLab and to BVP. Some years have been in the 30s, some years are closer to 40. I'd say pretty consistently, it's like 33 to 40, low 40s. So yes, you can do the math. So, for BVP, it's 30, call it 35 down, 40 down to 8 finalists, down to 3 winners. For BLab, it might be 40 down to 20 teams that we interview, and then we might take 12, 13. We don't take most of a 14 for BLab because it's hard for us to sort of do right by teams if we get spread too thin.
And the second thing is so also regarding the BVP, but if we're talking about a situation where the venture is something that will enter a market that is very nascent but already has some people in it, is that a situation where it's still permissible to apply for BVP, where it's sort of like we're already kind of past that stage, we should apply elsewhere?
So are you sort of wondering, I'm going to recharacterize this a bit, and you tell me if I'm off. So if you're entering a space that's sort of where there's a lot of competition already, is that?
Some competition, but it's a situation where it's sort of like, it's a different way of doing stuff, doing a service that other people are also attempting, but it's not like it's clear carbon copy of something that's already done.
Yeah, good question. So, if I'm entering a space where there are other people trying to do what I'm trying to do, am I going to get dinged in the application process for it? So first of all, we expect competition. If you're doing something interesting and you're tackling a real problem, you're going to have competition. And if you don't now, you will soon, if you're even if you're successful. So we don't have heartburn about competition. What I will say is it's important to articulate how you are different than your competition. How do you envision yourself out competing them? If your answer to that is we have a different name and our logo's different, it's probably not going to cut it. So, do some thinking. If you're entering a competitive market, you're going to want to do some thinking about differentiation. What I will say as a sort of a pro tip, we have had teams say, we're doing something totally new. No one's ever done this before. Well, the people who are reviewing your applications, one of the very first things they often do is Google what it is you're doing. And if the first 3 search results are people who are all doing basically what you are claiming to be the first to do, it's sort of a bad look. Well, not because you're being, duplicitous, hopefully, but mostly it sort of shows that maybe you haven't really looked around too carefully at what other people are doing. That's kind of a bad look. So, I think often people are too worried about this sort of want to downplay the level of competition because they're sort of worried about that. I don't worry about it. I just want to know how you're differentiated. Yeah. Good question. All right, there's 2. We need 2 more.
Yeah.
If you are a solo founder, how would you go about getting a team together, like looking for a team for B-Lab, and if it doesn't work out, is there a possibility to grow a team with other people who apply to B-Lab, like?
Yeah, great question. Everybody hear that in the mascot? Okay. So here's my thing about team formation. Best option, a great co-founder. Next best option, no co-founders. Worst option, the wrong co-founders. So, you know, I wouldn't, don't look at the application and think, oh, I'm a solo founder. Shoot, I better go find some co-founders quickly because otherwise I don't stand a chance. Don't do that. You know, you're probably going to want to try and find co-founders, but do it the right way so that it helps your venture, not for the purposes of the application. So we don't, you know, we like teams, but we have solo founders and B-Lab members too. So, and there's sort of full stop. Does that answer that question? Yeah. Okay.
And what if you met somebody that you identify as like, wow, this guy, or like I want to use a co-founder after the fact? Would you be able to add to the team or something?
Yeah, that has happened before. So that's sort of a case-by-case basis, and it kind of depends on who that person is, what their other commitments are. So we have had, you know, we recognize that, like, you know, you're trying to build something in the real world, and things don't. It doesn't always happen on sort of B-Lab specific timelines. So that's okay. So we've had that happen. Yeah. You know, what we don't like is, and we've seen this a few times, if you know. Gee, I got a friend who just whiffed on their internship applications and they're sort of looking around for something to do. And hey, I might be able to get you a stipend to come join my B-Lab team. So, you know, even if you're not, you wouldn't know a startup if it hit you in the forehead. So we don't want that, right? We don't want that. You know, we want to have people involved in the program who are excited and, you know, want to be part of the venture. Yeah.
I think someone may have had a question in the chat.
Oh, thank you for that. I'm glad that somebody's doing our job for us.
Oh gosh, how do I don't know how to see this one. All right, I'm gonna, here.
Well, that's good.
Okay, Colin, thank you for the presentation. Oh, thank you, Colin. Does Brown take any intellectual property stake in the work we generate through BVP or B-Lab? Do we need to formally disclose our inventions in either program? Excellent question, Colin. So you will be pleased to know that we are an equity-free zone. So we, you know, you get a stipend. It's a stipend. Nelson Center does not take any. We don't take any shares or any equity in your B-Lab ventures. Same with BVP. It is an award. We do not take any equity stake in that. We are long-term greed. We hope that you go and become very successful, and then in 10 years we'll come and ask you to support the Nelson Center for Entrepreneurship. So that's the equity question. About intellectual property, so it's funny, we haven't had sort of IP issues come up that much in B-Lab that I can really recall. So we don't really, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but like we don't really pay too much attention to intellectual property. And what I mean by that is it's sort of your job to figure out if you have IP or not. You know, if there's a question, if you do, and there's sort of concerns about sort of public disclosure and whether that has any implications, you know, that's something we sort of handle on a case-by-case basis, and basically try and give you the best advice we can give you about how to not goof up your IP. One thing I will tell you, if there's a question of like, does Brown own any of my IP? The answer is generally no, for undergrads certainly, with a few exceptions. And again, I don't want to. I'm generalizing here, so. This is sort of case by case, but in general, undergraduates don't have to worry about claims, with some exceptions. One is if you're doing something that where the thing that you're working on comes out of something at Brown that's sponsored by research grants. So if you're working in a lab, in the chemistry department, and you're working in a lab, and you know something that you're working on there is a sort of genesis for your venture. Brown might have a claim to the intellectual property there. I say might. Now, just because that claim doesn't mean they're going to exercise that claim. So what I would do, basically what I'd say is come find it. If you're not sure about that, come find me. We have a really good partner over at the Brown Technology office that handles all this, guy named Brian Demers, who we work with to sort of help clarify any questions around specifics or IP and sort of does Brown have any claim on my IP? So it's funny, it hasn't really come up much the last few cohorts for whatever reason. So, but good question, Colin. Okay.
One more question.
One more, I need one more. Okay. Actually, that was 4, I think. But let's go for 5. Let's go for 5.
Oh yeah, that's cool. You're right. I'm bad at counting.
Yeah.
I guess I have one other question.
Sure.
So for the B Lab or the B Lab thing stipend, you can't have like a part-time job at all?
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes. Come find me and we'll talk about it. I mean,
Like
how much,
like 1 day a week or something?
you know, if it's very small, I mean, what we really care about is it taking away from your ability to dedicate sufficient time and energy and focus to your venture, you know.
And the content that we're offering, because it's valuable content and we hate for you to miss some key thing because you have to do something else.
Right, if you're tutoring someone after school an hour a week, like, okay, that's probably not gonna detract considerably from your ability to venture. If you got a 20-hour a week gig part, that's probably a problem. So, you know, if you have questions about that, just come find us and we'll talk about it. Yeah.
I know you said the application mentors are available. When should we find out if we've been paired?
We are working on that right now. Colleague Katie's new to the last 2 weeks to Brown. So we're working on that right now. So we've got a whole bunch of, and the application mentor apps are from you all are starting to roll in. So we've sort of got enough of them where we're going to start doing some matchmaking pretty quickly. So, and it's going to be, here's your person, here's their contact information. And, you know, we give them a heads up as well. So we try to mimic the real world. We're like, you reach out and say, hey, thanks so much for being willing to mentor me. You know, I'd love to set up a call and talk a little bit about it. You kind of put the ball in your court.
I forgot to mention Jonas's class and the things that you can do to learn about entrepreneurship. That's Engine 1931T. It's the practicum. It's the culminating course for the certificate, but people who are not pursuing the certificate can also take the course. So that's another way to learn about entrepreneurship.
What was the class number again?
1931T.